Hi all, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, my name is Rachel Byers and I post art videos, tutorials, and brand comparison videos. This video is something that I've been wanting to post for quite a long while and honestly just now got around to editing it. For those who have followed me for a while, I just wanted to take a moment and apologize for being MIA. The best I can say is that life happened. My husband and I bought a new house and I drastically underestimated how not fun moving is, let alone packing up my studio. I thought I had my boxes labeled well, and boy, have I been wrong. The lack of studio in the new house, in combination with getting out of practice of editing and posting videos, is why there's been such a delay. So without further ado, let's get back to this video. For me, this painting started out when I came across a photo on my Instagram. I had seen a photo posted from Pine Hill Farms, which is a local flower farm, and they have the most stunning bouquets and flower sets, and I look forward to seeing them all summer long at the farmers markets. It's one of the very first booths I always go to, and they had posted this photo on their Instagram, and so I reached out and asked if they'd be willing to allow me to paint the photo. I loved the textures and the color combinations that she had in this bouquet and just had to paint it. And luckily she was kind enough to say yes, and so here we are. This acrylic painting is done on a 36 by 36 inch gallery wrapped canvas. And I can tell you right now that sketching out the flower placement on this large of a canvas with this many intricate petals and tiny flowers and little leaves took so much time, but I'm glad that I did have that because it gave me a guide for being able to block in different sections of the color. I decided to block in the sunflowers first just because I feel like having a white canvas just sitting in front of me can be so intimidating. So sometimes either doing a wash in the background or just adding in a bit of color makes it less overwhelming, and I'm more willing to start and begin adding different colors, different flowers in. Throughout the course of this painting, I had a love-hate relationship with these little spiky flower things. I love them from a texture standpoint, but painting them, I have some choice words to say about painting them. In the end, I am so happy with how those ended up turning out, but I can tell you right now that when I was working on this painting, I have contemplated pulling those out and replacing it with a different flower because I was struggling. While I was working on this painting, I had been posting videos and progress photos on my Instagram, and more times than one, I can say that I had people reaching out asking why I hadn't just started in one corner and gone to the next, why I continued to jump around and paint different flowers at different times. And all I can tell you is there's no real rhyme or reason for it. I liked being able to choose what flowers I was working on when. One day, one flower felt right, and then the next, it just wasn't vibing, so I went on to something else. I feel like this also helped for me being able to keep color continuity between the same flowers, just because of the fact that oftentimes when I was working on one style of flower, I was also pulling the colors that I had mixed into the other colors of that similar variety. So when I was working on one sunflower, I'd be touching up sections of another sunflower. Adding in the darker petals in the background helped me understand how far I needed to be able to push the values and contrast of the petals and the flowers I was working around. I didn't want to wait till the very last minute to add in those darker sections. for fear that the other flowers would look washed out and not as vibrant as they should. My goal for this painting was to capture the original likeness of the photo, but while maintaining a very painterly quality. I wanted the flowers to flow and have that delicate edge that each of those petals should, and be able to capture the different textures of the seeds in the sunflower and the little spikes of those spiky flowers. With trying to maintain a more painterly quality to this, I used different techniques, including steepling into the sunflower seeds and not even trying to maintain a similar size. In other sections, I would be globbing on paint more to have more defined lines, and then doing washes in other areas. In the same way that the blobs of color added to those sunflower seeds, I feel like the washes really add to the delicate nature of each of the petals without copying all the teeny tiny details. At the time of working on this piece, I didn't really pay attention to how much time I was designating to working on it. Honestly, I was just in love with it. With every new flower, I fell head over heels a bit more. Only looking back as I'm editing this video do I realize how much time and how many weeks I must have truly worked on it. And the only reason why I know that is how many times I've already seen my nail polish change. Can you imagine if artists today just sold paintings based off of how many times their nail polish had to change throughout the course of working on a piece, as if that just really determines the time spent. And yet, as I mention this, my nail polish has changed yet again. Of all the flowers on the painting, this one was by far my favorite to paint, and the one that I am most proud of. When I started on the middle, I had been terrified that I had gone too dark and figured that I was just going to end up having to just repaint over it. And instead, the end result is perfection. I know that's a lot to say, but my eyes gravitate towards that flower every single time I look at this painting, and I look at this painting daily. As I got closer and closer to the end, I just continued getting more and more excited about seeing this piece finished. As I continued working through the final flowers remaining, I would periodically go back in and push the values on the flowers that I had already finished, whether it was adding in a highlight or adding a wash to maybe push a petal back a little bit further that should have been a bit more in shadow. I was happy to see it just truly develop. With each painting, as I get closer to the end, I always like to take time to showcase it in a different way to see if there are flaws that I notice that I can adjust or fix. To do this, I will take my canvas and I will flip it on its side, or I'll flip it completely upside down, and then I'll step back. And I feel like having that different vantage point allows you to more easily see adjustments that need to be made. And to this day, I do that for paintings, I do that for drawings. I just feel like it's super helpful to be able to have a different perspective. For those wondering what brand of acrylics I'm using for this painting, it's actually a variety of brands. So I have some Liquitex. I tend to not use a whole lot of Liquitex just because for me, I feel they tend to be very transparent instead of very opaque. There's some Winsor Newton, as well as some Utrecht, which I hope I pronounced that correctly. But for most of my acrylic painting, I tend to gravitate towards golden acrylics, whether it be in like their heavy body acrylics or their fluid acrylics. For me, the fluid acrylics are really great for being able to do washes, or I used a lot of fluid acrylics for the darker sections of the background just because they were already thinned out. For the colors that I didn't have already in a fluid acrylic form, I would take a heavy body acrylic like my Utrecht or the Winsor Newton or even the Golden, and then I would just thin that down using different painting mediums, whether that was to create more of a glaze or just to thin out the paint to be able to allow me to create those different washes. I personally don't like using water to dilute down my acrylic paints. Just for me, I feel like I can tell the difference between using water or using an actual painting medium to make a paint more fluid, and so I tend to avoid it. Not that, a wet brush doesn't occasionally touch paint, but it's just not something that I use to dilute my acrylics. To finish out the fuzzy little flowers, I ended up using a dagger brush, and for me, I felt that that was the best fit to create the fine little hairs of those little flowers. I really liked the texture that added to the painting, since everything else was very flowy and soft, and then you have the nice little hairs of these pink little flowers. Adding in the fine details as I got to the end of the painting just made it all come together, and I can't tell you how proud I am of this piece. This painting has a home on my fireplace at my new house, and I love being able to look at it every single day. Thank you so much for joining me on this painting journey. I hope you enjoyed this video, and at the very least, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. See you soon.